Hello, I am here with Rachel Esterline-Perkins. Rachel has built a career telling stories through news, magazines, social media, video, and more. She is a fierce advocate and mentor for CMU students and is the host of the Venturesome podcast, where she shares advice on being ambitious, brave, and curious in the workplace. She earned a bachelor's degree in integrative public relations in 2010 and a master's degree in higher education administration in 2017, both from CMU. Welcome, Rachel. We're so excited you're here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do?
Yeah, so going back to the start of my career, I attended CMU to major in integrative public relations as well as minor in journalism and communications. And that really prepared me for my career. Public relations professionals like me use communications to inform and persuade. We advocate for brands and issues, and we build and protect the reputation of brands. So I have done PR for a broad range of industries, from higher education to nonprofit, clean energy to manufacturing. And you'll find a need for PR and integrated strategic communications in every industry. And communications can be seen in a lot of different forms. So that's what I do every day. So for example, there's media relations, where we work with the media to tell positive stories about a brand using press releases and press conferences. And then there's crisis communications, where we are keeping internal and external audiences informed about a major problem and how the brand is addressing that problem, from telling their board members, telling their employees, and also telling the public. There's also communications that support brands, whether it's informing or advocating for an issue, and that can include social media, newsletters, magazines, blogs, brochures, podcasts, and more. And PR pros also do a lot of work behind the scenes, such as speech writing and drafting communications for executive leaders and planning events. So all of those things are strategic communications that I take part in as part of my job.
Awesome. That's super helpful. That was educating even for me, and I feel like I was an IPR major, so it's super helpful. Okay, so what is it like to be a woman in your field?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when I was in college, PR was really female dominated. It seemed like there would only be one or two males in my classes. And as I have spoken in classes over the past couple of years, I frequently return to speak to CMU classes. I've seen that it has started to shift a little bit, but not nearly enough. So that being said, there are a lot of women in the field, but there are not enough women in leadership roles in our field.
Do you have a sense of why you think that is? That maybe there's more women in that entry level and less in those leadership roles?
Yeah, so you see a lack of women in leadership roles really throughout all of the business industries. And I think there are a lot of different reasons, and it really depends on each woman and as well as each workplace. So sometimes I think it's a workplace culture issues and there's obstacles to getting to the top. Some industries are incredibly demanding. For example, PR agencies are known for being very demanding, and that can be difficult if you're balancing family and other things that you need to take care of. And if there's not support for you at home or in the workplace, that can make it really difficult to get to the top. I think women also are perceived differently sometimes, and this is something that I've experienced. So where a man might be called a natural leader, a woman might be referred to as bossy and pushy. So we need to support more women going into leadership roles. I think really by supporting them at the start of their careers, so making sure women have support and mentors and sponsors as they are going into their internships and entry-level jobs, and then making sure that we are developing their skills and their expertise so they can move to the top.
I really appreciate your point about kind of similar traits being perceived differently in men versus women. And so I think that's part of it too, is that education of no, not being bossy, being a leader, and I think that's just super important. And I'm really glad that you brought that up. Can you talk about some ways that you have been treated differently, or you believe you were treated differently because you were a woman? You are a woman?
Yeah, so there definitely have been times where I feel like I've been treated differently, and sometimes it's hard to really put a finger on it. But I think a lot of it has come down to some of the ways that you're described, like we said earlier. So I definitely have been told that I'm aggressive, I'm pushy, I'm bossy. But really, I have strong leadership skills. I'm assertive, I'm direct, and I get things done. And so I think that it's important for people to not use stereotypes in the workplace, really for anyone. But in this case, definitely understanding that women can be leaders and should be leaders. And if they are pushing to get things done, if they are being assertive and speaking up in meetings, it's not because they're aggressive or pushy or bossy. They're demonstrating those leadership skills, and they shouldn't be penalized for that.
Have there ever been times where you have felt like you've needed to change your approach or kind of change the tactics because of those perceptions?
Sure, it's something that I'm conscious of every single day. So I might write an email and then go back in and add some words that make it a little bit softer if that's something that I feel like would help the message get across. Or even thinking about my personality type. So I'm a very direct person, and I like to get down to business as soon as I jump on, say, a Zoom call with a client. But I have to sometimes take a moment and remember that that can be jarring for some people. So I have to, ask about the weather and have that chit chat at the beginning. So I think it's not always just being a woman. It also can just be looking at your personality traits and how your work style integrates with other people's work style.
Do you ever feel like you, how do I want to say this? That there have been clients or whatnot who are resistant to working with you, or maybe don't trust your skills as much, that maybe you have to work harder to prove yourself because you're a woman? Have you ever experienced that in your field?
Yeah, definitely. There have been times where I've wondered if the reason why an idea that I brought up was dismissed when the same idea is brought up by someone else who is maybe older or male or more trusted in the organization, they might be able to push that idea through. It's not something I try to focus on, though. I've found that once you build trust with people, that can go really far. And so it takes time to build relationships and to build trust, so that way you can get things done in your role wherever you're working. I also think it's something that I experienced earlier in my career, maybe when I had less confidence and I was younger and less experienced. And now being older, I'm better at positioning myself and looking at how someone needs me to communicate to, really be a chameleon and position ideas in a way that can get things done. So it's definitely something that I'm conscious of, and I try to consider. And I also try to consider it when I am working with younger professionals. For example, when I have interns, I like to involve them in meetings. I like to have them be a part of developing ideas, because it gives them the opportunity to practice being heard and practice sharing their ideas with confidence. And I think that really prepares them for their careers as well.
That's a great practice to do, to be involving folks. And that kind of actually segues into my next question for you, which, how have you supported or been supported by other women in your field?
Sure. So I have had great career growth thanks to many mentors and sponsors, both men and women. There have been several IPR alums who I have been able to reach out to over the years, who have offered me advice on my resume, finding jobs, negotiating salaries. And these alums really helped shape my career as a whole and have helped with my career advancement. At the same time, I always try to give back in the same way. So I have students who will reach out to me and ask me to look at their resume or to give them advice. Sometimes they just need someone to listen as they work out where they are trying to figure out where they want to go in their career. And so I've been that person as well. I really enjoy helping alums or young alums and students because there are so many alums who helped me along the way in my career, and as well as faculty members at CMU who helped me along the way. And so I think it's really important to give back and to support not only helping people as they enter their careers, but being a mentor and sponsor to help them get into advancing roles and hopefully eventually leadership roles.
One thing you mentioned, Rachel, that I'd like to piggyback on is negotiating. And I know that for many women, they are looking at some of these disparities in maybe what they're being offered versus a male counterpart. And do you have any advice or recommendations for kind of new professional women in the field about negotiating?
Sure. So negotiating really starts when you're interviewing and they ask you what your salary range is. And the best way to answer the question when a hiring manager says, well, what salary are you looking for? The best answer is to say, I think based off of my skills and my experience that your organization will make me a fair offer. What is the salary range for this position? Can you share that? So you're taking the question and putting it back on them. And very often they will share the salary range. So you can make sure you're not shortchanging yourself at the very start. And then it's important to have some research and data that you have gathered, whether it's using online tools like Glassdoor or LinkedIn, or even talking to other professionals and finding out what they made at the beginning of their career, because it really varies by city and by industry as to how much money you might make starting out. So it's important to have that information. And then go to your mentors who can be a sounding board for you and say, this is what they offered me. What do you think of this? And looking at the package as a whole, what kind of benefits are they offering you? What kind of vacation time? Are they paying for your cell phone? And take all of that information and determine how much more you can ask for, because the worst thing that they're going to say is, no, sorry, we don't have the budget for that. But maybe they can offer you something else. Maybe they can offer you additional vacation time or additional professional development. And honestly, if they're the type of organization that rescinds the offer because you asked for more money, they're not the organization you want to work for anyway.
That's a really good point. And kind of inherent in that is knowing your worth, knowing that you are a strong professional and it is okay to ask for those things. And like you said, that, you're not going to potentially be looked at as less than. And if you are, that's probably not a place you want to be long term. I think that's an excellent point. How would you like to see your industry evolve as it relates to gender?
There definitely needs to be more diversity at the top. We need different types of leaders to bring different perspectives, and that's really important to consider. So as we're looking at hiring, we need to make sure that our teams aren't all people who look and sound exactly like us. So that's really where I think the industry needs to evolve, is looking at diversity and, of course, equity and inclusion.
Perfect. Well, do you have any advice? You've shared already some really helpful tidbits, but do you have any advice for female students who are pursuing this field?
Absolutely. So first, be ambitious. No matter what, even if you're being told that you're aggressive, there is nothing wrong with being an ambitious woman and an ambitious person. So pursue those opportunities, try new things. I think a lot of times when you're young, you worry about your peers judging you, and you really need to focus on yourself, especially when you're a college student and you're developing your career. You also should be brave. So apply for those internships that seem like a reach. Negotiate your salary, take some risks, and now's the perfect time to, say, move across the country for an internship. Or actually, now's the perfect time to take a remote internship at an organization that is across the country. And then finally, be curious. Ask a lot of questions. Find mentors and sponsors who will help you and learn as much as you can. And that'll really help set you up for success in your career.
That is so tremendously helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we wrap up our conversation?
Yeah, I think CMU is the best place to go if you want to major in public relations or pursue a career that really focuses on strategic communications, because the faculty and the support and the alumni network really help you succeed and grow. So that's what I would like to share is, if this is something that you're considering, or if you're starting to build your career and major in this field, CMU is the perfect place to be.
Excellent. Rachel, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I so greatly appreciate it and all of the insight that you've shared. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.